Welcome to Behind the Ballot, where politics meets real life. We break down state and federal issues, showing how policy shapes everyday Americans. Engaged, balanced, and informative, that's our promise. I'm your host, Mikkel Jenkins. And
And I am
last,
Muhammad Alec. My bad about that, Mikhail. I was trying to take my camera out because it looks a little bit like that ugly setup right now. But I am Muhammad Alec. Nice to join you as usual, Mikhail.
no, yeah, it's all good, all good. Muhammad's just having some camera issues. He has a new setup that he's doing.
Yeah, there.
So,
Hey, camera kept the audio. You can still hear me, right?
yeah, I can still hear you perfectly fine.
All right, perfect, perfect.
So just wanted to do a quick conflict timeline on what's going on with the US, Israel, and Iran war currently. So as we all know, the conflict erupted with coordinated US and Israeli strikes targeted Iranian nuclear facilities, missile production sites, air defense, and senior leadership gatherings in Tehran and elsewhere. Iranian state media confirmed the death of the supreme leader shortly afterward, triggering a 40-day national mourning and a week-long holiday. Iranian retaliations began almost immediately with ballistic missiles and drone targets targeting U.S. bases across the Gulf region, including multiple impacts on Al Udeid. Mohammed, you might be able to say that word better than me.
If
The
I
air
saw an
base in
Arabic, I could probably guess it, say it better. But based off what I'm seeing, I'd say Aludid.
Yeah, Al Udeid, the air base in Qatar. So by March 2nd, 3rd, U.S. naval and air forces had systematically degraded Iranian maritime capabilities while Iran launched further strikes on Gulf infrastructure. On March 4th, today, the Defense Secretary and Joint Chiefs Chairman General Dan Kane held a detailed Pentagon briefing asserting accelerating U.S. dominance, even as global energy markets reeled from Qatari LNG disruptions, shipping halts, Russian energy signals, a near total collapse in the Strait of Hormuz tanker traffic, and emerging allegations of covert operations straining Gulf alliances. President Trump has acknowledged that the U.S. struck Iran to defend Israel, stating if we didn't do it first, they would have done it to Israel and give us a shot if that was possible. U.S. objectives, repeatedly articulated by Secretary of State Marco Rubio, center on eliminating Iran's nuclear breakout capacity and dismantling its ballistic missile and naval projection abilities, and creating conditions for internal regime pressure or change without committing large scale ground forces at this stage. So as we all have, talked about and basically pinpointed, was that the reasoning for us going after Iran, for us striking Iran, was in protection of Israel, as it stated. And we have seen the videos of the decades of Netanyahu claiming that Iran is days, weeks, months away from creating a nuclear bomb. And
For
that is
decades
far from
now.
the case. Yeah, from decades now. There's multiple videos of it. Even now, the Trump administration is continuously saying the same thing as well, that they are only weeks away from even getting close to enriching a nuclear bomb, when there's reports out there that they're at most 6 to 9 months from that time frame. Now, I'm not saying that that's not a short time frame, but that at least leaves out months on the calendar for there to be additional negotiations as well. And it's important to note too that apparently this whole exchange about the United States going after Iran was really started during Trump's first administration with his meetings with Benjamin Netanyahu. So I'm sure if Trump was to win over Biden in that 2020 election, we probably would have already been in Iran. And funny enough, Donald Trump is the only Muhammad. I don't know if you know this, but Donald Trump is the only sitting president to have ever exclusively went to Israel, Jerusalem, and visited the wall as well. Other
Really?
presidents have not visited the wall. So I believe this was in 2017 when he did this. But other presidents, Obama, Nixon, the modern day presidents, they all went there but never went to the Wailing Wall.
Yeah.
He was the first one to do that. So it all starts to add up. as you look back at his previous presidency.
I swear that wall is magic, man. I'm
Yeah,
not even
it's
kidding when I say that. I think it has like some kind of like not hypnotic, but it does do something to the person who touches it.
Yeah, I completely agree. I know JFK was a very staunch individual against Israel when it APAC to register as a foreign lobbyist and things of that nature. And you saw what happened to him. And then you had all presidents since then that have visited with, obviously, said Trump being the first one to kiss the wall, which doesn't surprise me at all. I mean, you have individuals in his own camp, which we'll get to, calling him an errand boy and turning on him, basically an errand boy for Netanyahu and Israel. But before we get into all of that regarding the political shakeups with the Republicans and as well what is going on in the Democratic Party, want to get into verified military and strategic updates. So, as we were talking on our last podcast episode, the Pentagon is experiencing a significant depletion of precision guided munitions and air defense interceptors after just days of high intensity operations involving thousands of strikes and defensive engagements. Reuters and Washington Post reporting on March 4th detail how stocks of Tomahawks, bunker busters, SM-3s, and Patriot THAAD missiles are being consumed at rates far exceeding peacetime planning and exacerbated by concurrent support for Israel and prior commitments elsewhere, such as Ukraine, which the administration has touted that with all the operations that the Biden administration did and selling off the weapons and things of that nature to Ukraine, drastically depleted the arsenal of the United States. And so, as as the U.S. war on Israel is projected to have already cost American taxpayers over $3 billion, Mom, I don't know if you saw this, someone actually put together a running clock of all of the debt, kind of like how there's the national debt clock now.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's over. It's getting ready to tip over to almost like 3.1, 3.2, I believe so. So that just goes to show the financial burden that taxpayers are paying for this war, on top of the burden that we've already faced
I
with
mean,
financing the Ukraine war.
war is damn expensive, man. I believe in our occupation of the Middle East originally with Afghanistan and Iraq. I'm pretty dang sure we spent more than a trillion across like the 20 plus years
Yeah.
that we were there. And that's all, when we look at what the government says they can and can't afford, when we see the government say they can't afford tax
Yeah.
cuts for the individual class, when we see government say that we can't afford Medicare for all or XYZ, then we see them spend an astronomical amount on these wars that are literally not needed. It really brings in the question of, well, do we actually have the money for these things, or is it just that
Yeah.
we only have it for certain things that don't benefit the American people? And I mean,
It's seeming like it's the latter, honestly.
absolutely,
Like, it's definitely
absolutely.
the latter. Like, I mean, during the State of the Union touting the big beautiful bill and the tax cuts that came from that, but also not understanding the ACA subsidy issue that is still at hand. It's kind of like, it's a scenario of, I would say, back in Bonaparte's era, where it's like, let them eat cake in a sense. It's kind of
Yeah.
like what it is at the moment. You have defense contractors making hand over fist over this war as it begins. Um, you have corporate tax cuts coming in. You have more being expanded with Big Beautiful Bill, as well as another bill that will be coming that's going to expand other corporate tax breaks, which Trump has already touted. So you're seeing this real departure from the 1% in the middle class that people should, you know, not be surprised of at all. We knew that this was going to be here, and his base is revolting on him on end, and even his strongest supporters are starting to turn on him.
I mean, it's funny when you look at Trump's old tweets from before he got into politics,
Yeah.
because there's one that was from like during his era of just crapping on Obama. He said, "Watch Obama trigger a war with Iran to get
Yeah,
his polling numbers up because he doesn't
literally.
know how to negotiate." And then there was another one that was quite literally like, not verbatim, but paraphrasing it, basically saying that Obama only wants war with Iran because he doesn't know how to negotiate. Watch that. And then it's funny because Obama did negotiate the original deal to curtail any possibility of Iranian nuclear weapons, which then Trump repealed, and then now he's the one going to war with Iran.
Yeah, literally sets it all up. But like as I was saying, like from the Iranian that was reporting that all of this was already set up from Trump's first term, that sets the stage for it, getting the United States out of that Obama-led deal, and then now we have all of the events that have led up to where we are today, and then continuing on with the burden of the taxpayers and how to let the people eat cake scenario. The Deputy Secretary of Defense is coordinating a supplemental funding request to Congress, estimated in the tens of thousands, aligning closely with the 50 billion figure circulating in defense circles to replenish these critical capabilities, such as the interceptors and the THAAD missiles that we have just been hitting the Iranian drones, which we talked in our last podcast, which are only around what $30,000, Muhammad, to where an interceptor is almost like $1 million just to shoot it up in the air and take down that drone. So mathematically speaking, we are going to be running out of money, depending upon how long this war continues to go. And
I
then the
mean,
more,
the
yep,
United States, you can't run out of money. I mean, we're already massively in debt. That's more of a joke. We already are out of money, but
yeah,
more so that people are willing to take our word that we'll pay off our debts is probably going to last until for quite a while. It'll be a big deal once people start saying that America can't pay off its debts and that we have
yeah.
to even worse default on them. That really will ideally that will never happen. I mean, that's why we have the military and a few other.
No, without a doubt, and a more direct response from the dwindling stockpiles and this request, the White House has scheduled a high level meeting for Friday with executives from Lockheed Martin, Raytheon, and other major contractors who prioritize DoD production surges, potentially invoking the Defense Production Act to override shareholder dividends and accelerate output. Hastings has publicly acknowledged the burn rates, but insists that U.S. industrial base advantages and existing stockpiles provide a decisive edge. However, CENTCOM has delivered a striking update on Iranian naval powers. As of yesterday, all 11 Iranian vessels previously active in the Gulf of Oman have been reduced to zero operational status, with total confirmed strikings or destructions reaching 17 to 20 assets, with one of those assets being their famed, as in there, I mean Iran's famed Soleimani air, ship that they have. So that was something that was sunk, which is pretty substantial. And then you have satellite imagery from Plant Labs and BBC Verify confirms extensive damage at the Bandar Abbas in the Chahab Bahar, effectively neutralizing Iran's ability to threaten commercial shipping in the Strait of Hormuz for the foreseeable future. Because as we know, that strait is currently locked down by Iran, and it controls about 20% of oil output from the national view. And so, if that is continued to be locked down as it is, you're going to see prices surge, as you're already seeing it. I believe it's gone up 11 cents nationally in the United States. And continuing on the military updates, a U.S. submarine also conducted successful strikes in the Indian Ocean, further isolating Iranian maritime forces. Oil tanker traffic through the strait has plummeted by approximately 90% since the outbreak of strikes. China has tried to plead with Iran to allow them to at least let their ships pass through, which I have read that is something that is going to happen. And then you have many vessels anchoring outside of the choke points or rerouting via the Cape of Good Hope amid Iranian threats and attacks on shipping infrastructure. The March 2nd and 3rd Iranian ballistic missiles and drone barrage on the Al Udeid Mohammed says this better than me. The air base in Qatar, basically the largest U.S. facility in the Middle East, represented one of the most significant tactical successes claimed by Tehran. Iranian IRGC statements assert a single precision missile completely destroyed the ANFPS 132 Block 5 early warning radar, a 1.1 billion system critical for tracking ballistic missiles across a 5,000-kilometer range. Qatar officials have confirmed impacts on the base and shrapnel injuries, while satellite imagery reviewed by multiple outlets show clear damage to the radar dome and supporting infrastructure. Although the Pentagon has not released a full damage assessment, independent analysis described the strike as a partial degradation of U.S. sensor coverage in the Gulf, forcing reliance on backup system and compressing response timelines for allied air defense. And as we were talking in the previous episode, that is the new strategy that the Iranians are taking on. The strategy that they're doing, they are blinding, wanting to blind and trying to blind the United States from the sky and then make their moves on the ground. It's even been reported that they are now shooting missiles from underground silos as well, which will make it even more difficult to find, locate, and track where those missiles are coming from and where are they going, where are they trying to hit. According to a March 2nd New York Times report that has been since corroborated by CENTCOM force posture updates, approximately 50,000 U.S. troops across the Middle East are now directly assigned to operations against Iran. This is the largest such regional concentration in a generation. This includes crews for two carrier strike groups, over 200 fighter jets, and bomber aircrafts, and additional fighter jets and support assets flowing into bases in Qatar, Kuwait, Bahrain, and the UAE. Admiral Brad Cooper, CENTCOM commander, has confirmed the influx, while the Secretary of Defense emphasized during the March 4th briefing that complete control of Iranian skies is imminent within days. Today, those reports have been more so within hours, and that was probably around 12 today, where those remarks were happening. So the White House has echoed this assessment, stating it expects total dominance of Iran's airspace soon, with the U.S. and Israeli forces already achieving superiority and rapidly expanding it through ongoing strikes. The White House has also clarified that ground troops are not a part of the plan for the operation at this time. Separately, the White House also announced that Spain has agreed to cooperate with the United States with the U.S. operation in the Middle East after President Trump threatened to cut off trade with Madrid over the initial Spanish refusal to allow the use of its bases. However, that has since changed, with Spain now stating that they will not be working in conjunction with the United States. So it'll be interesting to see if Donald Trump holds true and continues to cut off trade to Spain. U.S. officials have also told Fox News that thousands of Iraqi Kurdish fighters have launched a ground offensive into Iran, with Kurdish militants based in northern Iraq reportedly moving across the border to attack Iranian security forces and potentially opening a new ground front in western Iran amid the escalating regional conflict. Emerging intelligence from CNN and Reuters indicates active CIA engagement with Iranian Kurdish opposition groups and militants based in northern Iraq, providing arms and logistical support intended to open a Western front and encourage broader domestic unrest inside Iran. Now, with all this going on in a major symbolic counterstrike to the CIA, arming the Kurd fighters, Iran launched a drone attack on a suspected CIA station at the U.S. Embassy compound in Riyadh, Saudi Arabia, causing limited fire, roof collapse, and material damage in what Iranian media and analysts have just described as a huge symbolic victory amid reports of the agency arming Islamic militants to spark an uprising. while the Secretary of Defense declined to comment on operational details. Administration objectives explicitly include fostering conditions for regime destabilization through proxy pressure. And we have seen this time and time again over many Middle Eastern countries. The White House says President Trump is discussing with the advisors the potential U.S. role in Iran after the conflict, which is completely premature to talk about how you're going to have a role within Iran when it's only just getting started. When you keep extending the time frame that you're telling Americans from 2 to 4 weeks to now we're looking at 8 weeks. Soon they're just going to start saying months and years, just as how Republican presidents have normally done when they've started wars. Iranian state media claims that the supreme leader did not designate a successor after the Trump administration in Israel had bombed around 50 of the Iranians' leadership. Before his death, there was no successor. So at this time, his replacement will be elected by the Assembly of Experts, contradicting earlier Western reports of selection in virtual sessions. This process remains unresolved amid wartime conditions, signaling continued hardline control rather than any moderation. According to state-run Fars news agency, Iran has begun shifting its governance structure toward preparation for a prolonged war that could last months or even years. Earlier on the other episode, I was saying they're willing to go at this for 60 to 90 days, if this is what the United States wants to continue to do. An Iranian military spokesperson warned that any attempt to overthrow the Iranian government would result in the destruction of energy infrastructure in the region. The Iranian military has announced it has finalized plans to target Israel's Dimona nuclear reactor if the US and Israel pursue a regime change scenario. So these Kurd fighters are already in Iran currently as we speak. So this regime change scenario has already started to unfold and take place. So it's going to be eye-opening to see if the Iranian military do target this Israeli nuclear reactor and strike it effectively. That will really put a lot of chips on the board to how the US and Israel would respond to that. I imagine it would be something not over the top, but something that is appropriate for that response. Iran has also started deploying ballistic missiles, as I was saying earlier, from its network of underground silos in mountain missile cities, as confirmed by satellite imagery and the IRGC statements, in an effort to preserve launch capabilities against ongoing US Israeli airstrikes. Iran has also warned that oil prices will hit $200 per barrel if the conflict escalates further. Earlier, I was saying that they have shot up almost 11 cents since this war has started, and 15 to 20% almost. So it's really ticking up, and it's really hurting Americans' wallets. And even just looking at the total cost of the war so far, it's really what is the financial benefit that Americans are actually seeing on the ground, and there is none currently. Israeli forces, according to a detailed Wall Street Journal report published March 1st, are deliberately targeting Iranian police state, including organizations responsible for suppressing protests and cracking down on separatists, in the explicit hope of clearing the way for a popular revolt. So even as Iran is stating, if you continue to push for regime change and revolts, we are going to attack your nuclear sites. You can see that Israel is not paying that any mind and is actively wanting to destabilize the region. And then you have the CIA as well arming these Kurd troops who are now in Iran, in the region on the ground. So as those developments update, we will be sure to bring that to you on our next episodes. The strikes have hit key decision-making institutions and internal security infrastructure, though analysts remain skeptical that the strategy will succeed in sparking widespread uprising. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu asked the United States whether the Trump administration was secretly talking with Iran about a ceasefire after Israeli intelligence suspected possible communications. So this is kind of like grounded and you're talking to you're not supposed to have your phone, you're talking to your friend and your mom walks in on you and asks, "Have you been texting anyone?" or something of that nature. Like they're a watchdog over us to some extent.
I
And it's
am back.
Mohammed, glad to have you back again. Just for the purpose of the notes, we are on page 6 of 12. I am going over the what's been going on, how Israel is taking out the police infrastructure within Iran to further push for a successful revolt and or destabilization effort. Um, so we're going to see what happens with that. And I was also speaking to Mohammed that Benjamin Netanyahu asked the White House if they were secretly talking with Iran about a ceasefire, and I was comparing that to if you're like, a little kid, you're grounded, texting your friends, and your mom is telling you you're not supposed to have your phone, and then she's asking you, "What are you doing?" It's kind of like that baby parenting that it feels like in a sense, but like it's just outlandish that the way that they're coming at us in this manner, kind of like, "Are you secretly doing this behind our back?" or something of that nature, when they're the ones that dragged us into this war. Them and the Trump administration dragged us into this war.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like he's like our babysitter on these negotiations or something of that nature.
I
And
mean,
it's outlandish.
I think a big reason why we're seeing such um un- astonishing, to say the least, tactics out of between the Israel and American government relations is because they know that the support for Israel, to the extent of what it is now, and even a fraction of it, is really going to go away once the new generation, now the next presidency comes around, most likely, because I and I think just as time goes on, it'll only dwindle and dwindle more. And a big reason why is because the boomer generation and Trump
But yeah, it's
particularly
only going to keep
himself.
dwindling and dwindling more.
Yeah, and Trump particularly himself, people think it's because of the Epstein files, and has some kind of he just goes with what Israel says and does. I remember there was a time where he announced the ceasefire between Iran and Israel initially, and then Israel bombed Iran a few times, and then he had to like cuss out Israel on live TV. It's
Yeah, yeah. He said they
the
were like
tail
fucking me
wagging
or
the dog.
something
It's
like
the
that.
tail wagging the dog instead of the dog wagging the tail. And
Exactly.
once this gets to a point where, in my opinion, Newsom, my honest guess is Newsom wins. But actually, that's based off right now. I just want to preface this. This is
Yeah,
a
definitely
year
based
and a
off
half
right now from
before
what he
a
said.
year and a
Yeah.
half before the debates, a year and a half before the campaigns really get going. I very well may change my opinion in a year, probably will, but we'll see because he's doing a lot of good of the early game build up stuff.
Yeah,
And
he really is. He's doing a lot of good early early game. I think if we'll get to his positions. He was at a event for his book tour. But however, someone was stating, if he just states, we need to fix the border just a little bit, like he can basically, like he's, set himself up to basically win the presidency and the primary this early on. But with
the
all of
debates will be
Mhm.
interesting.
No, it's definitely going to be interesting.
But to the
And
point of the Israel topic, yeah, to the point of the Israel topic,
yeah,
is that when he's made comments regarding Israel, and he recently called them an apartheid state, I believe.
yes, yes, he did. Yeah, he did
Yeah,
call them an
and
apartheid state.
he is the front runner at this point in time, and I think he'll only gain heat for the Democratic primary. And with the way things are going nationwide, it's likely that if it's a Democrat who's not Kamala Harris, the Democrats will probably win. They but we'll have to see what happens. But point being is that due to his stance on Israel, then we can tell that it's not going to be going favorably for them once he gets into power, most likely. And especially with the shift within the Democratic Party due to the voters that have already been gradually through through vocal means getting their lawmakers to slowly shift their opinion on Israel, to the point where most of the time where you get people who vote against sending more weapons to Israel and such, that are Thomas Massey and like 50 Democrats at this point, and it's only the numbers generally getting bigger and bigger.
Yeah,
And
$100.
I think a big part of what they're discussing. I mean, I know a big thing of what they're discussing with the DNC is their support of Israel. So and the fact that Newsom, who is very likely in the backstages with these guys, the DNC and more, they saying these comments, it's a big deal. Kind of seeing a shift in the party, and once the Democrats take hold, very likely, well, definitely nowhere near the amount of support to where it is now with this aggression.
Yeah,
And second handedly, they I believe that it'll be in hmm, restoring things back to the borders of the 1967 UN agreement. And that means Israel's going to have to give up a lot of land in Gaza Strip and a lot of land in West Bank because they've been
yeah,
illegally annexing it slowly from
yeah.
Palestine.
I think going back
And
to that original doctrine is definitely the way to go, and it's definitely a stance that Democrats and Republicans are going to have to make. I mean, even in the Texas race, Israel was a factor that played into it. As
yeah,
I was saying, we'll get to that, but yeah, it was definitely a factor, and it's going to be a factor for a lot of Democrats in 2026 and 2028 on every single level, at the state level and at the federal level as well. And then continuing on just with some military updates, the U.S. financial institutions remain on a high alert for Iranian leaks linked cyber attacks following intelligence assessments that Tehran may escalate in the cyber domain as conventional options diminish. The Federal Reserve experienced a temporary service disruption on March 3rd that delayed ACH payments nationwide. While officially attributed to technical issues, the timing aligns with heightened threats warnings and has fueled speculation of probing attacks, though no definitive attribution has been made public. Now, I can't even imagine a situation where, let's just say, the stock market's crashing and we have a cyber attack where you can't withdraw your money from any bank, anything. Like, could you just imagine if that was the case, or if a cyber attack nation, China, Iran teamed up, Russia teamed up to do an operation of that size, that would put us on our asses, literally. If that was the case, if something of that nature were to take place here in the United States, and something that we need to be ready for and need to defend against. And that's why we need to make sure that our cloud servers and also that our technology in that space is up to date as much as possible.
big argument for being clear of how much you hold in the bank. Honestly, like nobody at any point in time, like the more money you have, the more you can. The banks only holds at most a few $100,000. You know,
Yeah.
the moment multiple people on like a panic happens, it actually has happened in the past in the Great Depression. And then I believe it may have happened on a smaller scale during the recession, but where
Yeah, I
people
think
try
it
to
did
withdraw their
happen
money.
during the recession, actually.
Yeah, where people were trying to withdraw their money from the bank because of all the
Yep.
panic and how things were just going horribly, and the
I
banks
think
didn't
that
have
happened
money.
during COVID too, if I'm not mistaken.
I'm not sure.
I feel like it might have, but I would have to double check on that.
Yeah, damn. But point being is that it is something. It's something to be concerned about, and I want to be able to see what comes of it.
Yeah, it's gonna be interesting to see what really comes from it and how this all works out, and if there even is any, cyber attack of any means that does come, but hopefully we will be prepared for that. And as all of these things are going on in Iran, Ecuadorian and US military forces have conducted joint operations against designated terrorist organizations operating in Ecuador, as referenced in a recent ABC and Pentagon adjacent reporting. This reflects the Trump administration's broader hemispheric counter threat posture, but remains second to the primary Iranian threat currently that is touted by the Trump administration and his officials. Secretary of State Marco Rubio has been the administration's most vocal explainer, as we all know, stating in multiple briefings that the strikes were a necessary preemption after intelligence indicated imminent Iranian retaliation against U.S. forces if Israel acted unilaterally. So it's kind of like even if Israel just did their own thing, we had no way to stop them, which I just can't even fathom to believe. We supply them with so much, their people with so much money. There's no way that we couldn't have put down the hammer on them and say, if you do this, we cut you off completely. I think at any point that should have been stated when this threat was made, because it's kind of like, how are you going to threaten us when we fund you? It's just a sense of, they really have us, well, have the Trump administration, as they say, by the huevos, and that's exactly what this is spelled out, to be. Rubio has outlined clear goals: no Iranian nuclear weapons and dismantling missiles and naval threats, and expressed hope that the Iranian people will seize the moment to overthrow the regime while repeatedly ruling out large-scale U.S. ground invasions. Iranian deputy foreign minister has countered in interviews that, according to Netanyahu's own prior statement, the decision to go to war with Iran was effectively made during the first Trump administration, which explains the swift destruction, as I was stating earlier, of the Obama era nuclear deal and the long-term coordination that now plays out. No one to be
Yeah,
surprised really about anything that this Trump administration has been doing in regards and in support to Israel.
I think it does explain a lot though, in terms of why the deal was struck down. And
Of course.
yeah.
Of course
So
it
the
did. I
question is
mean,
always like, if the goal was to be able to keep them from weapons, why did you strike away the deal? And there's always the argument of, well, it's possible that he just did it because it was petty and he didn't want an Obama-esque deal on the table still while he was president, which is totally possible. But also, this is a fairly logical explanation instead of just basing it off of emotion. And I do think it's interesting to look and see how for the last few years everything's been a charade, really, in terms of
no,
what do
it's
you
been a
want Iran
complete
to do?
sham.
Yeah.
This administration has been a complete sham. I mean, in the March 4th briefing, which was today, the Pentagon briefing, Secretary of Defense explained the projected timeline, stating the conflict could be 6, it could be 8 weeks. Mind you, they said 4 weeks originally. They said days originally. They said days. Now they were at 4 weeks. Now we're at 8 weeks, or potentially longer, but repeatedly emphasized that Iran cannot outlast us, even though we gave you that breakdown on the interceptor and Iranian drone cost difference. However, the United States will take all the time that we need to succeed. And he contrasted this with earlier optimistic 4 week projections from President Trump, noting that while the U.S. can't stop everything Iran launches, air dominance and naval superiority are rapidly consolidating. And Hashtag described the campaign as accelerating, not decelerating. So we will see what this acceleration is going to look like from a lot of the images that has happened from today. It has been pretty brutal on Iran and even Israel as well. And then looking on the energy front as well, Qatar Energy has stated today they fully shut down liquefaction of operations at its Ras Laffan and Massia facilities following direct Iranian drone and missile attacks on infrastructure. And there were also reports that they ended up arresting Israelis that were trying to pose a false flag, and they apparently have them in custody. So it's going to be eye-opening to see what comes from that and what is the credibility around that as well. Because as we all know, there are theories out there of various false flags that Israel has either been responsible of or has action toward or has had a part in. And this is only really fueling that whole entire situation. And Muhammad, I don't know if you've seen this individual on X, TikTok, YouTube, Professor Jiang Quinn, I want to say.
I don't think
He
so.
so he's been breaking. I've watched his video like a few years back about the whole. He was the individual last podcast that was basically stating. Oh, I think
No, you're good. You're back.
okay, cool, cool, cool. He was the individual that was stating that said that Trump would win the 2024 election. We would go to war with Iran and we would lose that war. He was a professor that has been stating that, and he's kind of been blowing up recently because a lot of his predictions have been true. So Iran's strategic objectives extend far beyond mere survival in this conflict. According to this professor, Iran's leadership has never viewed the war solely as defensive struggle. Instead, Tehran's deeper aim is to unite approximately 2 billion Muslims worldwide behind a single flag, positioning Iran as the undisputed leader of the Islamic world. The plan, as articulated in these sources, is straightforward. Every Muslim majority government in the Middle East, from Egypt and Saudi Arabia to Algeria and beyond, is portrayed as a US backed dictatorship sustained only by American power. If Iran can successfully rally ordinary Muslims against these regimes by framing the conflict as a broader anti imperialist jihad, those governments could collapse from within through popular uprisings. The ultimate outcome would see Iran emerge as the central power, establishing what proponents term Pax Islamica, a new Islamic peace and order under Tehran's guidance. This narrative has gained a lot of traction, as I was stating to Muhammad, this professor has gone viral in the last few days over his predictions and over his analysis over what's going on. But it's very eye-opening to see and to understand his lens that he's really looking at this. And Muhammad, I would definitely, if you have the time, go and check it out because it's very in depth to how much he understands and knows about the ongoing conflict as well.
Yeah, I kind of want to get my opinion on this because this is
Yeah.
interesting. I've heard like a bit about this. This is my first time hearing it in detail, actually. The overthrowing the governments in some of the Muslim countries with the people's support would be difficult.
Yeah, I would greatly agree
Most
with
people
that.
are just fine with living if they can just stay alive and not really be mega oppressed. And I can't really
One
imagine
second.
how a civil war, not civil war, rebellion would work out, and especially the idea. So, hmm. And also the idea of Iran being like the capital of it, like the leading country of it. I also don't think that would work out. Damn. But the guy's definitely smarter than me, so I'll have to check out the video, see how he explains everything. Because it is an interesting idea. But for those who don't know, jihad just means struggle. So it just means anti-imperialist struggle. Jihad just gets the people going. Mikhail took a step away. So then going from there, we're going to the Qatar LNG shutdown.
Yes, Qatar LNG shutdown. Sorry, I was trying to find a longer goddamn charger for my laptop, but I think I can get this. We can finish this out with 10% left.
Yeah,
But
no, we can wrap it up real quick.
yeah, the Qatar LNG shutdown combined with Saudi temporary closures and Iranian threats to the Strait of Hormuz has produced immediate volatility and global markets. In a direct escalation to the conflict, Russian President Vladimir Putin has stated on March 4th that Russia could stop supplying gas to European markets immediately rather than waiting for EU's planned phase out in the coming weeks and redirect supplies to more promising destinations, possibly like China. This threat could comes as Europe faces compounded shortages from the Qatari halt and broader disruptions. And adding to the supply chain chaos, the second largest shipping company, Maersk, has suspended all new cargo bookings and acceptances of refer. And there's dangerous and special cargo for the UAE, Saudi Arabia, Bahrain, Kuwait, Oman, Qatar, and Iraq until further notice. So all of these things are just completely suspended. No new bookings, no more acceptances. So as all of this just compounds over and over and just piles on top of one another, oil prices will explode. And as Iran said, they will hit $200 per barrel. And that doesn't surprise me at all. Doesn't
Yeah.
surprise me at all, and we're gonna be seeing that. I mean, I'm sure when I worked from home today, so I'm sure when I go out tomorrow for work, I
It's
will
about
see
$3 where I am now. It was just like
yeah.
285 a week
Yesterday,
ago.
it was, 209 I saw, so I'm expecting to see I mean, not sorry, I mean, it was at 309 last I saw, when I was out the other day yesterday. So it's gonna be, interesting to see what those gas prices are at now, and realistically, that was the one thing that Trump had going for him. You know, groceries were starting to go down just a bit in certain areas, especially eggs. Gas was going down, stayed down. Now those things are rising, so it's like really
You know,
what's
I
a
would
win here?
normally say the president can't control the price of gas, but in this instance, he kinda did
I was gonna
force
say
it
you
up. He
kinda
literally did force it up.
exactly. He basically did. And as me and Muhammad were
Would have been
speaking
a good time to buy some, options,
oh,
honestly.
100%. Oh,
Yeah.
100%, 100%. And as me and Muhammad were talking how Israel has as the topic is of Israel has precipitated into congressional elections and state elections, and has also added to divisions within MAGA. Alex Jones and Nick Fuentes, who are very high supporters of Trump, have been among the most vocal critics within MAGA circles as of now. During a recent InfoWars broadcast, Jones described the decision as horrifying and refused to sign on to covering up World War III, while Fuentes labeled it an utter and complete betrayal and a 10 times worse than Iraq war, accusing Israel of dragging the US into conflict and urging an America first reversal, though rebukes highlighting hi- though oh, these rebukes
Mumbling your words, huh?
yeah, these rebukes highlighting growing fissures between isolationists. Because it's like I'm reading, but then I also have my dog just running crazy in the background. So I gotta make sure he's not doing anything
Let's wrap
nonsense.
this up. Your laptop's about to die anyway. Honestly, we can save the rest for the, next episode.
Yeah, mostly it's just talking about how Fuentes and Alex Jones have basically flipped on MAGA. They are now pushing for Republicans to vote Democrat in the midterms, and basically they want to shut out and down the Trump administration from even winning or taking any more seats. And then on top of this, on the Christianity front, there's new major controversy that has erupted within the U.S. Armed Forces. The Military Reaches Freedom Foundation reports that it was inundated with over 200 calls and emailed complaints from service members across every branch of military since the strikes began. The complaints allege that multiple commanders have used explicitly religious language to frame the war against Iran during combat readiness briefings. In one detailed account from a non-commissioned officer speaking on behalf of himself and at least 15 others in a combat unit ready for potential deployment, the commander opened the briefing by urging troops not to be afraid and instead to view the operation as all a part of God's plan. They're
Crazy.
saying yeah, it's
Crazy.
insane. They're reportedly citing multiple passages from the book of Revelations concerning Armageddon and the imminent return of Jesus Christ, and stated that President Trump has been anointed by Jesus to the light to light the signal fire in Iran to cause Armageddon and mark his return to Earth. This is absolutely insane and bonkers what
It is.
these
It
military
is.
individuals are saying to our troops. I mean, you're saying that this man is anointed by God. He is the chosen one, as he has in that
I am the
video.
chosen one.
It's like, are we serious right now? And that is where really the Bible more so comes into play, because that's when you have dangerous characters, when they try to persuade you with religious texts, but bend those texts in a way that's only good for them and their supposed mandate. I mean, a paper that I wrote in college was, with the I've spoke about this, if there was no religion, there would be less war because there would be less justifications that have been used, for war that have used Christianity, jihad, and all these different religions, and this is a prime example of that. A prime example of that, and I'm sure Christians are completely, completely upset about this, and Mohammed, I don't know if you checked our emails. We've been having a lot more individuals reach out to us actually, which is very, very fun. A lot more good episodes to come out. But there's actually someone from the faith-based area that reached out talking about the Christian vote. So I do think we're gonna have that individual on and kind of speak about this in Talarico and what's really shaking things up. And on the last section with 6% left on my laptop here.
Wait, I wanna
Cal
I wanna add something a little bit there
Yeah,
to
go.
your comment about how you said if there was less no religion or less religion, there'd be less wars. I
Yeah.
disagree with that. I think there'd be the same amount of wars. I think people would just look for whatever reason they can to do whatever they want to do. Last time when we invaded Iraq and Afghanistan, we said it was to get Osama bin Laden, and then we found him in Pakistan years later. And we didn't even actually topple the Taliban because they're already still back in power. Al Qaeda is gone, but we still deal with the same terrorist groups that we were dealing with before. At the end of the day, I
Yes,
think
no,
people will use whatever excuse they want. They used weapons of mass destructions before. It was just safety and national reasons, under the flag of American patriotism. I think people use whatever excuse they want to come up with at the
yeah, I
disposal of what
think
they have to go to war.
definitely now in modern times, it's definitely that is what it has been. It's any excuse will get you the okay for war or decimation of a population. But definitely in the way back then, Crusades eras, like all the major conflicts, there's been some tying to religion to some case. So that's where really the paper starts at. It's like if they don't have that case of religion, is do supporters support what they're doing, or is it just because they're using religion as religion being the main you could say the main subject at that time
It gets
back
the
then?
people going.
Exactly. Like now it's like whether now it's more so like hot topic issues, genocide, Supreme Court ruling on abortion, gay rights, things of that nature that get people up and going. But back then it was all, things about God, scripture, and things of that nature. So I feel like more back in those days, if religion wasn't a factor, we'd have had less deaths as well. Possibly our history could be a little bit different. However, though, don't want to stray away too far. Speaking on Gavin Newsom and the Democratic Party, Governor Gavin Newsom has continued to sharply criticize the U.S. Israeli strikes on Iran, using March 2nd and March 3rd appearances to question the administration's imminent threat justification, which the Pentagon and other military experts have questioned and refuted as well. He highlighted reports of civilian deaths, including over 160 schoolgirls in a strike near an IRGC site. Now, the press secretary was asked this question today during her press briefing, which I did watch. She basically stated that, "Do you believe that this is something that the United States would do, X, Y, and Z?" So there wasn't really a no. So that's still up in the air. However, Newsom has reiterated his long-standing position, never have and never will accept APAC funding, and but always condemning Netanyahu's approach. These remarks have resonated with various progressive Democrats and positioned him clearly as a voice distancing from unconditional support for Israel amid the war. And then, as we all know, and as me, Muhammad, had hoped and prayed on, and it happened on March 3rd, last night, election night.
Oh, Mikhail just got cut off. What a time to cut him off. Then excuse us for the technical difficulties of today's episode. And we Talarico won. Yeah, Talarico beat Jasmine Crockett, and the his laptop died. James Talarico beat Jasmine Crockett in the a primary Democratic primary, and John Cornyn beat Paxton, whose first name I'm forgetting. Poor Paxton. But to the point, Talarico's one was a big one. It sure is a step in the Democratic primary party that we were hoping to see because Crockett was a lot more pro-Israel, just very identity politic focused and not really solution based when it came to what the message she was presenting. And Talarico is a very clear cut. And also the second reason why is if we want uh I just we if the Party is trying to get a seat out of the state, out of the Senate from Texas, Talarico is a much better bet than Jasmine Crockett for the whole state for various reasons, just because of how the Texas is a fairly southern Christian culture, and Talarico kind of gives off that charismatic fit to it and appeals to the voters more. And it's going to be an exciting November. And with all these technical difficulties and with all that said, I think it's time to wrap this up, everybody. Thank you for listening. God bless you. God bless America. It's a great night, everyone. Stay alive or a great day, whatever time you're listening to this.